Okay, so let's dive into Indonesia
Sounds good.
and their connectivity problems and how they're trying to resolve it.
Yeah.
I mean, Indonesia is made up of over 17,000 islands,
Right.
and connecting everybody has got to be a massive challenge.
It is a challenge, and it's interesting. I think a lot of people think of Indonesia as very rural, but they also have incredibly dense cities,
Right.
like Jakarta, which is
Yeah.
just a massive city.
I think it's one of the biggest in the world, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. It's top 10, I think.
Wow.
So you have these sort of two extremes that you have to solve for in Indonesia.
Yeah. So I mean, even Telkomsel, which is their largest telecom provider, is struggling.
Yes, they are.
And they're facing all these network congestion issues.
Right.
I mean, people are having problems with slow internet speeds,
Yeah.
dropped calls.
Yeah. And traditional solutions like underwater cables. I mean,
Yeah.
that's expensive and logistically difficult in such a geographically diverse area. And even for wireless communication, Indonesia has faced this like really unique set of hurdles.
What kind of hurdles are we talking about?
So, they've had challenges in optimizing their spectrum allocation,
Okay.
which means they haven't always been able to use their available radio frequencies in the most efficient way for wireless tech.
Right.
And this has made things even tougher for Telkomsel, who are already dealing with, network congestion and frustrated customers.
Right. So it's not just about laying cables between islands. It's also about making the most of the wireless spectrum they already have.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's where this company Transcelestial comes in. And they've got a pretty radical solution.
Oh, really?
Lasers?
Lasers, like shooting internet through the air with lasers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've developed this device called Centauri, which is basically a shoebox-sized laser that can beam data between buildings
Oh, wow.
and completely bypass the need for cables and traditional radio frequencies.
Okay, color me intrigued. How does that even work? Are we talking about giant laser beams shooting across the sky?
No, not quite. The lasers are invisible to the human eye, and they're designed to be totally eye-safe.
Okay, good.
They're incredibly focused, so it's like a very narrow tunnel of light connecting 2 points.
So no accidental laser shows for the neighbors then?
Nope, totally safe. Think of it like super fast, invisible Morse code using flashes of light.
Okay.
So the Centauri device on one rooftop sends out a coded message, and then the device on the receiving end decodes it,
Oh, okay. So no cables, no digging up the streets, just point and shoot.
pretty much.
That sounds incredibly efficient, especially in a place like Indonesia.
It is.
But is it reliable? I mean, what happens if it's a stormy day?
Well, that's one of the really impressive things about this tech.
No.
Transcelestial has actually designed these Centauri devices to be incredibly robust.
Oh, wow.
They can handle rain fog, even light snow, without any interruption in the data flow.
You're telling me these little shoebox lasers can handle monsoon rain? I'm not convinced.
Yeah. Yeah, they've really engineered these things to withstand some pretty tough conditions. But it might be even more impressive than the tech itself,
What's that?
the cost savings.
Okay, let's talk money. I'm guessing lasers aren't cheap?
Well, here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about Indonesia's challenges with spectrum allocation?
Yeah.
Well, traditional wireless communication relies on very specific radio frequencies.
Uh-huh.
And those frequencies require government licenses,
Okay.
which can be incredibly expensive.
Ah, so it's not just the physical infrastructure, it's the bureaucratic costs, too.
You got it. And because Transcelestial's laser technology completely bypasses those traditional radio frequencies,
Yeah.
they also bypass the licensing fees altogether.
So no digging trenches for cables,
Yeah.
no bidding wars for spectrum licenses.
Nope.
That's got to be a huge advantage for Telkomsel.
Huge.
Yeah.
To give you a concrete example, the licensing fees for just one 10 gigabit link using traditional radio frequencies
Yeah.
can be over US $80,000 over 5 years. Now imagine multiplying that by 20 links.
Yeah.
That's over US $1.6 million.
That's a lot of money.
A cost completely avoided by using Transcelestial's lasers.
Wow, that's a significant difference. I hadn't realized licensing was such a big factor.
It's huge.
No wonder Telkomsel is jumping on this technology.
It's a win-win for both companies. Telkomsel gets a really cost-effective solution to their congestion issues, and they avoid those hefty licensing fees.
Right.
And Transcelestial gets a major client to kind of showcase their technology's effectiveness.
Yeah, it's a really smart partnership.
It is. And the impact could go way beyond just saving money. Think about those students on remote islands.
Yeah, the ones struggling with slow internet. What happens to them in this laser-powered future?
Well, with this technology, those students could suddenly have access to high-speed internet, opening up all kinds of educational resources and opportunities.
Yeah.
It could be transformative for entire communities.
It's like suddenly switching from dial-up to broadband.
Exactly.
I remember that was a game changer for me back in the day.
Huge. And it's not just about education, you know? Think about healthcare in remote areas. Doctors could consult with specialists via video conferencing. Patients could access telemedicine services. I mean, the possibilities are pretty exciting.
Yeah, they are.
Mm.
Okay, I'm sold on the potential.
Yeah.
But I'm still curious about the security aspect. I
Mm.
mean, we're talking about beaming sensitive data through the air here. How do we know it's safe from hackers?
That's a really important question, and Transcelestial has taken security very seriously. Remember how we talked about those laser beams being so incredibly focused? It's like a
Yeah.
private tunnel of light between those two devices.
So unlike Wi-Fi, which kind of blankets an area,
Mm.
these lasers are point to point.
Exactly. It's much harder to intercept a laser beam than it is to kind of snoop on a Wi-Fi signal.
Right.
And on top of that, the data itself is encrypted.
Okay.
So you're adding an extra layer of protection. Even if someone could intercept the laser beam, they wouldn't be able to make sense of the data without the encryption keys.
Okay, that does make me feel better. So we've talked about cost savings, reliability, security. It all sounds pretty impressive. But how's this actually playing out on the ground? How much of Indonesia is actually using these laser links right now?
So Telkomsel has already deployed nearly 20 Centauri devices,
Okay.
creating over 25 kilometers of laser-based connectivity.
Wow.
It's still early days, but they're already seeing some real benefits, especially in terms of that network congestion relief.
So they're essentially adding extra lanes to the information superhighway,
Yeah.
but with lasers instead of asphalt.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And they're not stopping there, too. Telkomsel has these ambitious plans to expand this technology to more areas, including those remote islands
Yeah.
that have been so difficult to connect in the past.
This all sounds incredibly promising, but I have to ask, are there any downsides to this laser technology?
Yeah.
It can't all be rainbows and unicorns, right?
You're right. There are always challenges with any new technology. One thing to consider is scalability. I mean, right now, Telkomsel is using these lasers for specific point-to-point connections.
But if they wanted to connect a whole city or a large region, they would need a lot more of these Antaria devices.
So it works great for targeted solutions, but blanketing the entire country with lasers might be a different story.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the regulatory landscape.
Mhm.
You know, and Indonesia has a complex set of rules around telecommunications infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And even though this laser technology bypasses traditional licensing fees, there might be other bureaucratic hurdles to jump through.
So even though the technology itself is promising, navigating the red tape could slow things down.
Yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind. And then there's the question of maintenance. I mean, these devices are exposed to the elements,
Right.
so there will need to be a system in place to make sure they're kept clean, calibrated, and in good working order.
So it's not just a set it and forget it kind of solution.
Not quite, but even with these challenges, I'm really excited about the potential of this technology.
Mhm.
I mean, we're seeing a real shift in how we think about connectivity,
Yeah.
and Transcelestial is at the forefront of that innovation. It's a great example of how sometimes the best solutions come from thinking outside the box, or in this case, outside the cable. But what does this all mean for Indonesia in the long run? Could lasers really be the key to bridging the digital divide in a country with so many unique geographical challenges?
It's certainly a step in the right direction, and not just for Indonesia. Transcelestial is already expanding to other countries with similar challenges.
Oh, really?
From the Philippines to India. This could be the beginning of a global laser communication revolution.
It's definitely a story worth following. Who knows, maybe in a few years we'll all be getting our internet beamed in through our windows.
Now that's a thought-provoking image. One thing to ponder. Could laser communication eventually replace traditional fiber optics altogether? Or will it mainly serve those hard-to-reach areas? What do you think?
Well, that's a great question, and one we'll have to keep an eye on as this technology develops. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into Indonesia's connectivity leap.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.